In the ancient land of Uz, there lived a man named Job. He was a good and honest man who loved God with all his heart. He tried his best every day to live in a way that was pleasing to the Lord, always turning away from anything that was wrong. God had blessed Job greatly for his faithfulness. He was the wealthiest man in the entire region, a sign of the abundant favor he had received. His fields were home to 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels. He also owned 500 teams of oxen for plowing and 500 donkeys, along with many loyal servants who helped manage his vast estate. His life was full of peace and prosperity. Job's greatest treasures were not his animals or his land but his family. He had 7 strong sons and 3 beautiful daughters, and he loved them more than anything. He enjoyed watching them grow and was a dedicated father. They would often gather for feasts, sharing laughter and joy in each other's company. Job was so careful in his devotion to God that after these family celebrations, he would rise early in the morning to make special offerings. He did this just in case his children had accidentally sinned in their hearts. He wanted to make sure his entire family remained pure and close to God, showing his deep and constant care for their spiritual well-being. In the heavens above, God saw Job's good heart and was pleased with his servant. He pointed out Job's righteousness to all. However, a challenger, Satan, suggested that Job's faith was not genuine. He argued that Job only loved God because he had been given so many wonderful gifts and was protected from all harm. Satan believed that if all these blessings were taken away, Job's faith would crumble and he would turn his back on God. He proposed a test to see if Job's devotion was truly sincere, confident that without his wealth and happiness, Job would surely curse the one who had given it all to him. This challenge set the stage for a great trial of faith. God, knowing Job's true character, allowed the test to begin. He permitted Satan to take away everything that Job owned, from his vast herds of animals to his precious children. The only condition was that Job himself could not be harmed. This was the start of a journey that would push Job to the very limits of his endurance. It would test not just his love for his possessions, but the very foundation of his trust in God. Job's peaceful life was about to be shattered by a storm of immense sorrow and loss, a test unlike any other. One day, while Job's children were feasting, messengers began to arrive one after another, each bringing terrible news. The first one ran to Job and said that raiders had stolen all his oxen and donkeys and had killed the servants who were with them. Before this messenger even finished speaking, another arrived. This one reported that a great fire had fallen from the sky, burning up all 7,000 of Job's sheep and the shepherds who cared for them. The wave of terrible news was relentless, each report worse than the last. Job's world began to crumble in a matter of moments, his immense wealth vanishing like smoke in the wind. A third messenger rushed in, his face filled with panic. He told Job that powerful raiders had swept in and carried away all 3,000 of his camels, killing the servants who tended to them. As Job tried to process this catastrophic loss of his livelihood, the final and most devastating blow came. A fourth messenger, barely able to speak through his grief, told Job that a mighty wind had struck the house where his children were gathered. The house had collapsed, and all of Job's sons and daughters were gone. In a single dreadful day, Job lost everything he held dear. His entire world was stripped away, leaving him in complete desolation. Despite this overwhelming tragedy, Job's reaction was astonishing. He stood up, tore his robe as a sign of his deep sorrow, and shaved his head in grief. But then, he did something incredible. He fell to the ground not in anger, but in worship. He said, "I was born with nothing, and I will die with nothing. The Lord gave me everything I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise be the name of the Lord." Even in his darkest hour, with his heart broken into a million pieces, Job did not sin or blame God for what had happened. His faith, though tested by fire and storm, remained strong. But the test was not over. Satan, seeing that Job still held on to his faith, went before God again. He argued that Job would surely curse God if his own body was afflicted with pain. So, God allowed Satan to test Job further, but commanded that his life must be spared. Satan then struck Job with painful sores that covered his entire body, from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Job sat in ashes, scraping his painful skin with a piece of broken pottery. His own wife, seeing his misery, told him to curse God and die. But Job replied, "Should we accept only good things from God and not trouble?" As Job sat in misery, 3 of his friends heard about his terrible misfortunes and came to comfort him. Their names were Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. When they saw Job from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. His body was covered in sores, and his face was etched with unimaginable pain. They were so shocked and saddened by what they saw that they began to weep loudly. They tore their own robes and threw dust on their heads to show their shared grief. For 7 days and 7 nights they simply sat with Job on the ground in complete silence because they could see that his suffering was too great for words. After the 7 days of silence, Job finally spoke. He did not curse God, but he cursed the day he was born. He cried out in anguish, wishing he had never existed. He questioned why he had to endure so much pain when he had tried so hard to live a good life. This was the beginning of a long and difficult conversation between Job and his friends. They wanted to help, but their words were not always comforting. Eliphaz spoke first, suggesting that Job must have done something wrong. He believed that innocent people do not suffer like this, and that Job's pain must be a punishment from God for some hidden sin. Bildad spoke next, agreeing with Eliphaz. He told Job that God is always just and fair. Therefore, if Job and his children were suffering, it must be because they had turned away from God. He urged Job to admit his wrongdoing and ask for God's forgiveness. Zophar then spoke even more harshly. He told Job that he was probably getting less punishment than he deserved for his sins. All three friends were convinced that suffering was a direct result of sin. They could not understand how a righteous person could face such devastation, so they concluded that Job was not as righteous as he seemed. Job listened to his friends, but he disagreed with them. He knew in his heart that he was not being punished for a terrible sin. He maintained his innocence throughout their long debates. He expressed his deep confusion and sadness, asking God why this was happening to him. Even in his pain, a flicker of hope remained. He declared, "I know that my Redeemer lives," showing a deep, unshakable trust that God would ultimately vindicate him. Job's journey was now not only a battle with physical pain and loss, but also a struggle to defend his integrity against the well-meaning but misguided words of his friends. After the long and painful conversations with his friends had ended, God finally answered Job. But he did not speak in a soft whisper, or provide a simple explanation for Job's suffering. Instead, God's powerful voice came out of a whirlwind, a great and mighty storm. He did not tell Job why he had suffered, but instead began to ask Job questions. He asked Job where he was when the foundations of the earth were laid. He questioned if Job could command the morning, or if he understood the vastness of the sea and the stars like Orion and the Pleiades. God revealed his immense power and wisdom through the wonders of creation. God continued to describe the incredible world he had made. He spoke of wild animals like the mountain goat and the wild donkey, creatures that lived beyond human control. He described the magnificent and fearsome behemoth and the mighty Leviathan, powerful beasts that no human could ever hope to tame. Through these majestic descriptions, God showed Job how little humanity truly understands about the grand and complex universe. He revealed that his ways are far beyond human comprehension. Job listened, humbled by the sheer scale of God's power and the intricacy of his designs. He realized how small his own understanding was in comparison. Overwhelmed by this display of divine majesty, Job responded with true humility. He told God, "I know that you can do all things, no purpose of yours can be thwarted." Job admitted that he had spoken of things he did not understand, things too wonderful for him to know. He said, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." Job did not demand answers anymore. Instead, he found peace in trusting God's infinite wisdom, even when he could not understand his reasons. His faith had been tested and was now deeper and more profound than ever before. After Job humbled himself, God restored his life in a magnificent way. He blessed the second part of Job's life even more than the first. God gave him twice as much as he had before. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 teams of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He also blessed him with 7 new sons and 3 new daughters, who were known as the most beautiful women in all the land. Job lived for another 140 years, long enough to see his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He died an old man, full of years and at peace, a timeless example of how faith and patience can lead to hope and restoration, even after the darkest of trials.